As we learned in our last session, our understanding of God is based on what he has revealed to us. It's important then to understand the ways that God chooses to do this. And so I want to start today with reading this passage from Psalms chapter 19. Verses 1 through 4, it says this: "The heavens proclaim the glory of God, and the skies display his craftsmanship. Day after day they continue to speak, and night after night they make him known. They speak without a sound or word, their voice is never heard, and yet their message has gone throughout the earth, and their words to all the world." Have you ever been surprised by the beauty of the natural world? Maybe you've stood on the shore of the ocean and just been amazed at what you see. I remember the first time I flew over the North Pacific Ocean. It was at night, and I was traveling with a friend from Anchorage to the Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Russia. And when we were in the middle of the air, the flight encountered strong turbulence, and immediately I felt powerless and so afraid as the plane is bouncing and shuddering along. So gripping the armrest with one hand, I reached towards the window with the other, and I lifted the shade. And what I saw, I will never forget. Because stretched across the horizon, dancing and moving like a living ribbon as they reflected from the sky onto the pitch black water, were the northern lights. These brilliant shades of neon green and deep blue shimmering through the glass. The beauty of that moment, I think, will stay with me forever. And I think that this is the effect that God is intending when he creates the universe. That every time we're afraid or we feel abandoned or alone in the world, this over-the-top beauty of what he has created, it surprises us, reminds us that we're not alone, and points to him. And in every corner of creation, God is telling us what he's like. The Apostle Paul writes this in Romans chapter 1, verses 19 through 20. "They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. And through everything God has made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, his eternal power, and divine nature. So they have no excuse for not knowing God." You know, from the movements of planets and stars to the changing of seasons and tides, creation tells us of God's power and greatness. And in Job 26, we find this lengthy description of many natural wonders, skies and seas and the heavens and these powerful creatures of the deep. And as amazing as all these things are, in verse 14, the chapter ends with this profound statement. It says, "These are just the beginning of all that he does, merely a whisper of his power." You see, all that we have seen, every stunning display of God's beauty and power, it only begins to reveal the depth and the greatness of who God is. I think of this like God is like a world-renowned artist who is known by his paintings, or a master craftsman whose works are completely unique and unmistakable. He puts his mark on everything he makes. It's his brilliance and creativity and his care. It's all evident. Everything from galaxies to the development of, the tiniest microscopic bacteria. But it's not just through nature that God reveals himself in creation, because the crown of his creation, his best work, is us. As David writes in Psalms 139, 13, and 14, it says, "You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it." David knew that every breath you breathe, every beat of your heart, every muscle movement, every synapse in your brain, they all testify of this masterpiece making God. And like every great masterpiece, you were made with a purpose, both to please your maker and to show others how great he is at what he does. Although many have tried, no test tube arrangement of the elements in our bodies, atoms of carbon and hydrogen, oxygen, calcium, phosphorus, all these things, nothing can form a living creature. The creation of life from these elements is God's greatest miracle, and it's something that chemists can't replicate or explain. And while science doesn't have an answer for how life begins, the Bible does. In John 1, 3, and 4, it says, "All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and that life was the light of men." So take a deep breath. Feel your heart beating in your chest. The life you're living right now is a result not just of human biology, but of God's power and creativity. Your intellect, your sense of right and wrong, your ability to reason and create, these are all traits given to you by your Creator, and they point us back to Him.